Welcome, everyone. Today we're going to be talking about study abroad, diversity in study abroad, representing all of Creighton's community members, students from the undergraduate to the graduate schools, and some resources to get you started in your study abroad journey. Awesome. So when we talk about study abroad, diversity abroad, which is one resource I'll talk about a few times throughout this presentation, is one of many resources online specifically for students focusing on issues of student mobility, so various physical disabilities, mental health accommodations, LGBTQ plus students, students of color, students of various socioeconomic status, and women seeking to study abroad. And Diversity Abroad it's one of my favorite sites. It has a ton of resources for students who are looking for a perspective on their future abroad experience that looks a little bit more like their own. That is a big effort of the US in general and of Creighton in particular to really make sure that students have access to resources where they can see themselves studying abroad, where traditionally or in previous years, maybe that was not as well represented. So one example of some big forward movement in the United States in particular, students of color. In 2006 and 7, around 18% of the study abroad student population identified as a student of color. And then by 2017, 2018, about 30% of students identified as students of color. So within a decade, saw some pretty big increase there, and schools all around the nation, again, Creighton in particular, really want to continue seeing that number grow. And there was tons of resources, scholarships, and supports to make that happen for students. So we'll talk a little bit about some of those. So why study abroad? Specifically, as an underrepresented student, identity development is huge for all students, but again, particularly for students who are maybe exploring, seeking heritage, going out and seeing what it's like to experience your identity in a completely different culture. That will allow you to gain a new perspective on the United States and on even future job markets. Your ability to kind of see yourself through different lenses and to challenge stereotypes, both about the host country that you're studying in, but also dispelling some of your own stereotypes perhaps, or some things that you've always held to be true here in the United States. Study abroad also enhances your resume and future job interviews and your job prospects. Being able to say that not only are you very well qualified as a Creighton graduate to apply for and earn many different jobs, but also that you have had this overseas experience that really levels up your ability to interact within different cultures, possibly different languages. And finally, now is the best time to see the world. I cannot emphasize that point enough. In the future, it becomes extremely difficult to take time away and really explore meaningfully other countries outside of just a vacation. This is truly the best time to do the best of both, taking classes, earning credit, getting an internship completed, while also exploring and traveling the globe. This is a screenshot of Diversity Abroad, whose resources are available to all Creighton students. There's some examples here in the guide to preparing to go. They've also got guides for when you're in the visa application process, when you're studying abroad, when you're returning from your abroad experience, and all sorts of reflections, blog posts, lists, things that might help you get a better grasp on what your experience will be experiencing any of your various identities while you're abroad outside of the United States, possibly for the first time ever. So that's a really good resource that I highly recommend to students. As well as we have a great partnership with a program called ISEP. And ISEP has a diversity section to their website that lists all sorts of, again, great lists, really personal experience of students, good and bad, things they wish they had known before they went abroad, and more. So I really recommend checking those out and asking your global programs coordinator to access those resources if you're curious about one or more of our study abroad programs. And then I just want to talk a bit about scholarship opportunities. there is a lot in the way of scholarship monies for students out there, and one big one is the Fund for Education Abroad, or FEA. This I highly recommend students, particularly first generation, minority, or LGBTQ students, or adult learners, to apply for these scholarships. They can be up to $10,000 for a semester abroad, which is pretty significant. Another similar scholarship opportunity is the Gilman, and that also does preference students in those categories listed above, but is open to any undergraduate student who is receiving a federal Pell Grant. So if you are receiving that federal grant from the US government, we always have a handful of Gilman scholarships every year. That is a pretty accessible scholarship, and I am happy always to advise and review essays for that scholarship in particular. And then the Creighton Global Engagement Office also offers scholarships. We have a rotating annual scholarship for students in SSS, the Student Support Services Program. So ask me if you have questions about how to get involved with SSS, or if you're already in SSS, what that application looks like. You can always check out on our website, and I will go ahead and click out to it here. We have a financial aid section of the website where you can view and apply for these scholarships. This one is about to open up, I know. We've also got specific scholarships for particular countries. So this one, the Building Bridges India Semester Scholarship. There's some other regional ones listed out down here. Some are particular to language, but many do have a focus on underrepresented students in study abroad. So again, any way that you can make that more possible, more accessible to you, we want to help you get there, and we want to help you do that. All right, so just a few tips, some tips from past students, kind of gathering these as you're going along and deciding if study abroad is something you do want to pursue. Some things you might consider or think about is that shift in privilege that you will probably experience depending on where you go in the world. Maybe some of our panelists today can talk a little bit about experiencing a different level of access to mobility and moving in and out of the United States and abroad, access to different types of vacation or fun opportunities, weekend excursions that just are not accessible in the same way to the host community where you might be living. In the US, if your race or ethnicity is not the majority, that may be currently a defining factor of your identity for you. But abroad, depending on where you are, you may be perceived as American first before anything else. And locals frequently ask questions about students' nationality and heritage, particularly in really homogenous countries. That is something that students experience quite a bit. As looking or feeling typically American, and what that means abroad versus what that means here. And maintaining a support system of family and friends, romantic partners, that is huge. Having that support network of people back home who can help you deal with and process some of the feelings of isolation or culture shock that you may go through, that is important for every student, but particularly for diverse students, for minority students in their study abroad program, that can be a huge support for you. And ask questions. I mean, really, if you're at the beginning, or if you've already decided you do want to do this, you just have to pick a program anywhere along the spectrum, please talk to your global programs coordinator about talking with a Creighton student who shares your identities, who can talk to you a little bit more about what that experience was like for them. We can also reference you out to different online resources for you to access as well and read on your own. And along those lines, the internet is full of resources. There is hardly any topic that is not covered anymore on the internet about studying abroad and exactly the place you're studying abroad. Getting to know the social and historical situation in your host country is also extremely important, both to have a respectful perspective and go in curious and, you know, in a posture of learning when you're going to study abroad. But it also will help you with that transition. So it helps you know a little bit more about what to expect. Learning some of those phrases can help you get around the first few days and help you have a more meaningful and in-depth experience when you're abroad as well. And without further ado, the experts themselves are going to talk to you for the rest of this panel. And I'm going to introduce all four of them with their slides and a photo of them while they were studying abroad. So I will start us off with Morgan.
Hi, my name's Morgan Eames, and I am studying political science on the public policy track in international relations. The program I participated in was Creighton and Bologna through the Spring Hill Italy Center. And it's just one of the greatest experiences that I've been through in life, and it was such a period of growth for me. I absolutely loved where I was.
Awesome. Thank you, Morgan. Ethan?
Hi, my name is Ethan Alumba. I'm a nursing major and Spanish minor from Minnesota. I'm currently a senior. I have been on a couple of different study abroad areas. So the first one I went to was a FLIPA, or a faculty-led program abroad that went to Spain, that really focused on the Spanish language and culture there, that also went to Morocco for a day. And then alongside Eva, I also went to Encuentro Dominicano in the fall of 2018 for the entire semester. And then we also went to Cuba on a little FLIPA there for a week as well.
Awesome. Jalia?
Hi, I'm Jalia. I'm a sophomore now at Creighton University. Well, as you guys know, I'm majoring in BIA in finance, and I got to go to Australia the first semester of my freshman year, and I'm also in the Global Scholars Program, and honestly, it was life-changing.
Hi, my name's Eva. So I went on the Encuentro Dominicano program with Ethan, fall of 2018. I'm from Dallas, Texas, and I study nursing with a minor in Spanish, and I am also a senior. Yeah, that experience was really formative for me, and I truly did love getting to find more about my identity there too.
Awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and fire a few questions to the panelists. If there's experiences that you all want to share, just your really unique experiences, please feel free. But first, I want to know why you chose your study abroad program. Of all of the millions of options, how do you narrow it down?
I mean, I'm probably the easiest to answer here. I didn't really have a choice. Not to say that was a bad thing, but I'm a member of the Global Scholars Program. So I knew going into the program that I was going to be going to Australia for my first semester. It's the program, the way it works is you go to Australia first semester, the DR your sophomore year, and then your junior and senior year, you go on FLIPAs, usually abroad. So I kind of knew I was going to Sydney. And to be honest, I wasn't crazy about Sydney. I knew about it, but it's never been somewhere I was like, oh, I really want to go to Sydney. But it's one of those countries where you go to and then your mind just kind of gets blown at the diverse cultures that are there, the amount of different people you're going to meet from different countries. It's such a homogenous country where you have people from Africa, Asia, all over Eastern Asia, Southern Asia, the Middle East. And it's just this amazing country to be in, and a city that's represented with so many different cultures. So that's really how I chose Sydney, I guess, and the factors of Sydney that were so enticing to be in.
For me, one of the really big reasons that I went to the Dominican Republic was for the Spanish language. But what's really interesting is that I was originally all approved and ready to go to Scotland. But then very last minute, Jill gave a presentation to our nursing class about all the cool things you can do in Encuentro Dominicano. And something that really stood out to me was the whole aspect of doing social justice and service learning work when we were in the country. And I'm sure Eva can touch on this too, but one of the really good experiences that stood out to me was called Campo, and it's where you really just like live and kind of work with the local population there in the countrysides to kind of learn not only more about their culture, but also kind of live in, I guess, for lack of a better term, solidarity with them. So that was something that really drew my attention to choose there rather than go to Scotland.
Yeah, and then I can kind of add on to why I chose. Mine was that I did meet up with Jill, and I was like, oh, I'm really set on going to Lima, Peru. Maybe we can make it work. And then she was like, oh, but what about this program? And she got to learn more about me and sort of like my identity. My mom's from Mexico, and so I was kind of also torn of, oh, maybe I should, maybe not go to a Latin American country. Maybe let's go to I don't know, what country do I want to go to, since I have so much of that from my mom. But I was just really pushed again from like the service and learning aspect of it. And I think that overall, like I don't regret my decision at all. It can be intimidating for nursing students to leave their first semester, their sophomore year, but I think do it. Creighton like will be here when you get back. Even a pandemic, we're back. So it's sort of like take the opportunities you get and go for it.
I chose my program specifically. It came about because I was torn where I wanted to go. And then I was like, I know I kind of want to go somewhere in Europe. And then I met with Krista, who advised me. I was thinking of Creighton in Sweden. They had some sort of program at the time. And I was considering going there, but she goes, hey, there's this like great program. I think you would really enjoy it. And it really reminded me of Creighton, but just plopping it in Italy. So that's what drew me to it, and my deciding factor was based on the fact that I could kind of continue the same like social justice aspect that Creighton has in a different country. So that's why I chose the program that I participated in.
Awesome. All right, can you talk a little about a unique experience through the perspective of your identities, whatever you're comfortable sharing from your study abroad experience?
I'll go first. So kind of how I touched upon, so my mom's from Mexico, and then my dad is American and whatnot. And in the house, we learned Spanish in my life, but because my dad didn't speak Spanish, it was like my mom would speak to us and then we'd respond back in English. So I never really learned Spanish as a first language. And so, but I would say, even though some people tell me I'm fluent, I would never consider myself fluent until my mother considers me fluent. So who knows when that will be, but an interesting experience when I first got there. Kind of small, but I think it's fun, is like how Mexican my Spanish was. When I went to the Dominican Republic and went to my service sites, like an expression in Spanish that you use a lot for people who are older than you is mande. And that's when you kind of respond back to them if you don't understand what they're saying to you. And right when they said that, they were like, oh, like right when I said that, they were like, oh, like Mexicana. And I was like, oh no, like no, like I was just kind of, I was like, actually, like, you know, and then I explained my story and stuff, and they're like, that's so interesting. So I think, and other expressions too, like in Compo, learning about their dialect there as well, and trying to understand that Spanish was very interesting. So I think my identity of like with my mom being from Mexico and learning that, I think it was very interesting to kind of transfer over how like different, a lot of people think Spanish is all the same, but it's definitely not. Just like English isn't the same in Australia and England. So yeah, that was something that, just a fun little thing.
So I identify as a member of the LGBTQ community. And so one of the things that was really unique about my experience in the Dominican Republic is that it's a very, very Catholic country. And so, but what's really interesting is that we stayed for most of the time in a city called Santiago, which is a very big city there. And so it was really interesting because there, like, the LGBTQ community was like, it was known, like people knew about it, like people were okay with it. But then it's like when you got to Campo, which was literally like, I don't know, like 10 miles away from the city, or, you know, 20 miles, 30 miles, whatever, it was a completely foreign concept to them. And it was very shocking because they didn't really understand, I guess didn't really have an awareness of the different types of sexuality, and that it's like not really a choice that I'm given, you know, I was kind of like born this way. But it was really interesting to learn from their perspective and like through their culture, what they viewed about the LGBTQ community. It was a really good learning point for me, kind of to take back to the United States, where we just think of it as a normal, I think, for the most part at this point.
Awesome.
For me, I guess it was a little bit of a different experience than what Ethan was talking about, because obviously I'm a minority at Creighton, and if you've walked around Creighton's campus, you know that it's a predominantly Caucasian campus. Like, there's very few minorities, and even then there's even less Asians, to be honest. Like, one of the first things I always do in my class is count how many minorities there are, just because I'm always curious, because it's just one of those things you do as a minority. You always just like want to see who else is a minority. And it's kind of sad that we don't have that many And the cool thing about going to Australia was that I felt more in touch with my culture. I'm Sri Lankan, and there's literally like this whole suburb of Sydney that's like little Sri Lanka, effectively is what it's called. Like they have all the Sri Lankan foods. They have like all the movie signs will be for like Sri Lankan movies. Like you go to the stores, everybody's speaking in Sinhala. Like I'll walk from store to store and like I'll just like know what everybody's talking about. And that was kind of this cool experience of like at times at Creighton, I can feel very disconnected from my culture and my heritage because it's not as present. But the ability to study abroad allowed me to connect back with it and have that connection. And it was also nice being in a city like Sydney where there was kind of that link because I'm so used to having like some of those Sri Lankan foods from like home sometimes. Like I'm from Omaha. It's like if I want food, like my parents can just get it to me and like stuff like that. So it's always a really nice thing. So picking a city like Sydney where there was that influence was really, really nice. And even then, just being able to engage in like Sri Lankan culture, like they'd have Sri Lankan events and like cultural stuff was really nice. And I enjoyed that being in Sydney. And so that's definitely something I'd advise is like if you are a minority, like find there's always like student associations linked to like whether you're Latino, Filipino, Indonesian, and engage in those events because it can kind of be nice like having that sense of community that's more present there than maybe it is at Creighton.
Awesome. Thanks, Julia.
I would say as a Black woman or African American woman, my experience in Bologna was something that I never felt before. Like in the slide said, some countries you will not be seen necessarily for the color of your skin and more so the fact that you're American as soon as you vocalize something. So that was something I was very nervous and apprehensive about traveling and how I would be perceived. And one thing that I will remember, no matter how small this sounds to most people, I walked into an H&M in Italy and I was so nervous because they have a security guard at the front of the store. So I was like, I'm preparing myself to be followed around the store, watched. But the thing is, no one did that. And my whole time in Italy, I really never felt like anyone was looking at me for my race. And it was the first time I had experienced something where I did not feel like an outsider and that people were solely looking at me for the color of my skin. So I would say Bologna really opened my eyes to a different view of the world, and having that experience was humbling, and it allowed me to check my other privileges that I do have, and being an American and seeing the immigrant population in Bologna, just the difference in that and how they were treated in comparison to I was treated there. I really am glad that I had that experience and could see something and not have to constantly worry about someone looking at me because of the color of my skin.
Oh, thank you, Morgan. Awesome. That was great sharing. Thank you all. Is there anything that you're particularly proud of, or a skill that you developed, language skills all the way to taking a class you never thought you would? Anything that stands out to you from your study abroad experience brings you pride?
One of the things that really stuck out to me that I just utilized this past Sunday was we got to spend a day in the operating room that we have at the ILAC Center in the Dominican Republic. And so we had an American team come down and they had me kind of help translate in the post-op area. And it was really cool because like I was developing like my Spanish language skills through the summer before in Spain, and then again in the Dominican Republic we were speaking Spanish every day. But then this past Sunday I did my emergency room shift I did my emergency room shift, and they needed a translator, and they didn't have one available, and like their Marty system was down. So I was like, I can speak Spanish, I can help you, what do you need? And so I got to go in with the PAs, with the x-ray techs to help them translate for this patient who only spoke Spanish. So it was really cool to transfer my abilities that I learned in my time abroad to real world applications for my nursing major. So it was really cool to get to experience that.
Awesome.
I would say personally, something that I've carried from my experience in Bologna is the idea of reflection. And that's something that they really embed in the program I was in. So for me to be able to carry that every day to reflect and actually listen to what's going on around me. That was like an exercise we learned to actually sit in silence and reflect and see what we see and what we hear and how we feel. I've carried that on to my daily life, and it keeps me in the moment, and it allows for me to experience life as it is, and it allowed me to experience Bologna in the moment as well, because I was actually immersing myself in my surroundings. So I'm glad I got to do that. And also I learned how to book flights and travel and do trips and everything. That is something I never did. I am so proud of myself for that. And I'm glad that I had the opportunity to do that. So now I'm kind of obsessed with planning and traveling.
Awesome. That is definitely a life skill. Yeah. All right, I'll move to the next question. How did you prepare academically, financially, linguistically, emotionally? What did you take? What steps did you take to prepare for this experience? And maybe what do you wish you would have done to prepare?
I would say that the global engagement office does a really good job in preparing you with the meetings that they have and kind of advising you with sort of like checkpoints on what you need to have done, even like before you apply for the program, such as like, you know, your passport, your visa, and all these different things. So I felt like I was very prepared there. The part though that I really want to touch upon is like emotionally. I think emotionally, I don't think you really can prepare for whatever study abroad experience you go for. Culture shock is super real when you get there and when you come back. And it's something that you kind of just have to take in with open arms. A huge thing that I'm an advocate for though is like let your heart break during this time and during your abroad experience, because it's better to like love and have your heart broken than like not to love it at all. And so that's just more of how I wish I kind of wanted to know that. I think I knew it in the back of my mind, but it would have been nice to hear those words of let your heart like be broken from the experiences, and then from there lean on your community to realize how you can build it back up.
Well said. Anything else on preparation? All right, and I might end with this one here. How has your path of study, if it has changed, how has your path of study, your future career goals, or even your personal life changed because of the experience that you had abroad?
So for me personally, I grew up in a lot of different countries. First, like this, I guess that's my personal story, is that I moved around a lot growing up and I've lived in a lot of different countries. And then I came back for high school and middle school and then now university. And going abroad again and like experiencing a different culture and seeing like a different lifestyle, like reassures me on the fact that like it's great to take a vacation to Italy for like a week. It's great to go to like maybe Cuba for a couple of days and just visit. But you can't beat spending like 2 to 3 weeks or like spending like 1 to 3 months in a different country and like really engrossing yourself like in a different culture. And that's really something I've looked at in terms of my major and my future career path, like picking a career and picking something that doesn't lock me into having to live in America. Because once you study abroad, you really do want to live somewhere else again. Like even if like it's only for like 6 months, even if it's only for a year and you come back, like that's something that I've really thought about, like the practicality of my degree, of like what my future career is, and if is it something I can only do here, or is it something I can do like anywhere in the world? Because I met a lot of people in Sydney who are like investment bankers or just like people who were traveling the world. They were doing jobs that they could do from like anywhere, and because of that, it gave them the freedom and the luxury to spend like extensive periods of time abroad. And I've started to think about that a lot as well.
Awesome.
One thing that I realized through my experience is that Americans, we live to work, and in Italy, they work to live. So one thing that I've carried that on with me, that I will try to work is not the entirety of my life, and wanting to do the things like help others and be involved and do all sorts of service things is something that I will make sure to follow along with my life. So ideally in that experience, it put me in a place where I realized hey, take a second to slow down, take a second to see what else there is to offer, and your life solely isn't for you. It's for you and others around you, and how you can work together in a community. And something that I gained from my experience in Italy was this sense of community that I want to carry with me every day.
Awesome.
One of the things that's really changed my perspective from the Dominican Republic is, as a nurse, one of my future career goals is to get my medical interpretation license, because even like working on the floor in the ICU here, I've realized that culturally sensitive care is absolutely huge, and it's very prominent no matter where you go in this country. And it's like, as a nurse, you're the patient advocate, you're the person who has to stand up. And it's like, if you can't provide culturally sensitive care, then you're honestly doing a huge disservice to the patient. And so for me, one of my really big goals is to be an advocate for whatever organization that I work for, or to educate, all of the staff on what it means to be culturally sensitive, how do you be culturally sensitive, etc. Especially with language, because that's like a huge barrier that even on the floor we find a lot. And so I think that's something that has really stuck in my mind, especially as I've experienced that here within the last couple of years, but also especially in the DR as well.
And then the last thing I wanted to add on there is, more especially with like the public health aspect, I think a lot of me was like, oh, well, I'll definitely be like working in a hospital after I graduate. And even though I still think that would be my plan, I know for a fact that I would love to do what I can, public health on the side, whether it's volunteer for clinics, help with like the flu shot season, do what I can for the community, and really put service into my life is so huge. And also with like preventative care. And I don't think I would have recognized that if I didn't study abroad.
Awesome, guys. Thank you so much for sharing. Really, that's hearing your authentic experiences is, well, something that personally makes me love what I do all the more, but also just is an incredible testament to the study abroad, the educational experiences that you can have when you take what you've learned at Creighton and go out to the world with it, and take, some of what you've learned and been curious about and have experienced back with you. So thank you again for your authentic stories and sharing. Do you all have anything else that you'd like to leave the audience with here that you didn't get to say previously, or that you'd encourage your fellow Creighton students to take advantage of this opportunity?
I would say one thing I loved about the program I was in was the trips I was able to take. At the time, we did a trip to Switzerland, and we also did a choice for a trip to Greece or a trip to Puglia, Italy. So I would recommend, like, if you do end up going, definitely choose the trip to Puglia, because it was life-changing. And it was such a period of reflection and change, and it just really shifted part of my identity in a sense, and where I want to be and what I want to do. So definitely do that.
I would just say take a trip to the GEO. Like, even if like you're not sure how you're gonna pay for studying abroad, or if studying abroad is even for you, or like just go there, like have a conversation, see what's available. And I think even if like you walk out like not having any concrete plans, just check it out, because studying abroad sometimes can be really scary. It's something that people are afraid to do there for like a lot of reasons, be it your ethnicity, your like sexual orientation, your financial situation. Like, there's a lot of barriers to studying abroad, but the GEO at Creighton does a really good job at finding ways to get past those barriers, and it just never hurts to have a conversation.
One thing that I've really taken from this experience studying abroad is make yourself vulnerable. That's something that Creighton, we really stress, especially with reflection, is making yourself open to really making mistakes, because that's the way that you learn. That's the way that I've learned, not only as a nursing student, but also just in life in general, especially in the Dominican Republic, when you may be in the middle of the street and not have internet or anything, and you have to find a guagua to go home because you don't have any other way to get there. But really, that's how you learn, is being vulnerable, and kind of going through that experience really makes you kind of reflect later and think to yourself, like, this is definitely a learning experience that I couldn't have gotten any other way.
And then last but not least, sorry, I keep like holding everything up, but no, I would say I think also going to the Dominican Republic, what is it, like my journey as being somebody who is Latina but racially white has been definitely a journey within my own of the privileges I have and also the communities that I've like delved into. So I would also say like studying abroad is a great opportunity to kind of cycle into those conversations and really delve into who your identity is and how it shaped you up until now. So that's another reason that I would encourage you to study abroad.
Just fantastic. Really do check out the Study Abroad website, glance through programs if nothing else. It's always fun to look. Please do make an appointment with us or reach out via email. There's a million ways to be in contact with the Global Engagement Office at Creighton. And as you heard here, a million reasons to do it. So thank you all. I'll go ahead and stop our share and end our recording here.